Hello, this is Lisa Rose here on Connect to Love on PRN-FM, and I'm joined by the amazing Michael J. Russ. I want to welcome you with a big hug, virtual hug across the airways. And how are you today, Michael?
I'm awesome. Always.
I knew it.
Beautiful day. Got my walk, got my exercise, and I just said, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go get that pedicure this morning. Yeah, let's do that. And it was fun. You know, it's fun to take care of yourself. It's fun to love on yourself every once in a while. Hopefully not, not too distant apart from each other. You love on yourself. Do something fun for you. And I like to do that at least once a day. So I had a good time.
That's wonderful.
I hear you went to see some beautiful flowers. I saw some pictures. I have to say that the pictures you sent were just so spectacular. So spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
I hope you put the series of them on Instagram because they were beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was truly an inspiration to go to a holiday flower show that talked about magic and really exemplified that. And I think when you see something that comes out of somebody's imagination that's brought to life, it just is so incredible. You think, how did they think of that? And wow, how many thousands of lights that they used in this one tree that I took my camera and I just went up the tree and just watched. And there was something, and it sort of actually sparked my thoughts for the day, because there was a tree, and they call it the Chinese pagoda tree it's at Phipps Conservatory. It's out in the garden. And it had these lights, these strings of lights that were draped and hanging down from it, and they were activated by your voice. And so they encouraged and invited people to sing to the tree and to video it, and you could win a membership. And it was interesting because laughter illuminated yellow lights and red lights, and different tones from different people's voices caused all sorts of it was a spectacular light show, and we walked away, and it was so interesting because these individuals that passed by the tree when we were on the other side, I don't know what they were playing, but it was like something out of a rock concert, like that you would see with it just illuminated the tree. And it was pretty amazing. And I think whenever I thought about it, I thought probably when January hits and they start taking down the show is when they start planning for the next year's show. What can we do to bring joy to so many different people? Mm-hmm. And it's really, really, really amazing. And just to walk into one room where orchids were blooming and every single plant there had at least 4 or 5 orchids on one stem, I'm thinking, how did they get them all to bloom at the same time? But it's it's their intention that they want to make it a spectacular show. And I think that's sort of where we were chatting a little bit before the show, because both you and I were mentored by Glenn Brooks, the founder of the Vibrant Living Network. And Glenn used to sign off every show saying, what would you do if you knew it was impossible to fail? And that sentiment has echoed throughout my life, and I know also throughout your life. And there's a book that just came up on my radar screen. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to embrace it because it was written in 1934 by a woman named Dorthea Brande, and it was called Wake Up and Live. And she wrote the book during the Great Depression. When people were not having a lot of hope, they were really struggling with their lives and how to navigate through day to day. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. We're not in a Great Depression, but a lot of people are really challenged. And so she wrote this book really about why we fail, what the different things are that challenge us. She said, she had been wanted to write. And back then, it wasn't really, women in those days really weren't encouraged to be writers. But I look at somebody, right, even now, like J.K. Rowling, I look at and I think about her story. She was turned down by 12 different publishing houses. And they looked at her and they said, well, maybe you could change your name. Maybe, if you weren't a woman, you would be successful. And it was just that knowingness. And who would have ever believed at that time, when she had gotten rejection letter after rejection letter, that she would inspire so many young children and so many adults, and for it to grow into such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Not just the Harry Potter series, but the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and theme parks and all sorts of different things that have become sort of part of our culture. And yes, I thought it would be a fun place for us to play today.
I think so too. What comes to mind when you said that about Dorthea Brande is that the fact that most people that I know don't approach life that way. Wake up and live, right? They don't approach life that way. It's all about getting up in the morning, and they've gotten themselves into a routine, and they're into that routine. And anything outside of that routine doesn't really come to mind. It's like there's no time for it. It's kind of like we say it's a good thing to meditate first thing in the morning, to have that quietness and to allow your guide to talk to you, to clear your emotional baggage that you've been carrying, or whatever happened from the previous day, or something like that, to allow space for creativity and inspiration to invade, your space between the thoughts, that kind of thing. And, I think about what came to mind was Queen, the band Queen, who took risks with their music at the time. And when they brought this music that they were writing to the head of the record company, he laughed and said, "This will never work. Right? This will never work." And he literally let them go to another record company to record their music, and it was one of the biggest mistakes that he ever did, because he was living in a little box of what he thought was possible, what he thought people would like. And you and I talked about this a little earlier this afternoon, where we never know what's going to resonate with someone. You don't. If you impose your own limitations on your own creativity, or the legs your creativity and inspiration will have with the public, or with those, how it will resonate with people in the world, you're making a big mistake, because most people live from limitation. And I was listening to Mr. Anka, who channels Bashar, and that stood out like a sore thumb. It was like the thing that most characterizes this world we live in, this dense reality of Earth that we live in, this earthly plane, is limitation. People live from limitation, and it's because, in my view, because they live from a comfort level. If they're comfortable with something, they stick with it, and because it feels good. However, over a period of time, it doesn't actually benefit you to be in that space. You have to expand beyond those boundaries, beyond those invisible walls, mental walls the mental boundaries that you've set up for yourself. And because you were meant to do great things, whatever those things are. And I'm not talking about, make $1 billion maybe, or being president of some small country. I'm talking about great things with regard to peace and love and joy and happy and connection, relational connection with other people. You can do an awesome thing by simply smiling and giving kindness, showing kindness, sympathy, compassion to someone who at the time could really use it, because that is the pivot. That's the infusion of energy that they need, and the frequency to shift where they are in life. And this all just sidestep, just people just stepping all over opportunities to be kind and empathetic and compassionate and loving, and to be friendly with other people. Now, back to this thing that Glenn used to say, which, you know, it's one of those questions that has infinite array of possibilities, right? In terms of boundaries, there are no boundaries, and you know, the infiniteness of the question is just blow your mind. If you sit down for 10 minutes and you ask yourself that question and you start thinking, which most people, I would speak to people and no, that would never cross their mind, because it would involve taking risks, stepping into areas of uncomfort. And as I told my buddy yesterday who called me, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know, starting a new job and he's not comfortable doing what he's doing, so he's thinking about quitting it. I'm going, what is the matter with you?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I'm like,
started.
Yeah, I know, and it's
crazy
because the learning curve is like 4 weeks, and he's wanting to be where he wants to be in 2 days, where it would take 4 weeks to get to. And I said, dude, you know, he says, I'm uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable. Get comfortable with that. That's right. What you need to do. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's how you grow. That's how you expand, not only who you are, but the what you're resonating. You have to do that. And instead of and otherwise, sometimes the planet has, you know, if your soul has a mission, many levels of intentions, and you're only hitting a couple of them, and you said, hey, when I go into this life, I'm going to do this, and this, whatever they may be. It may be a feeling that you'd like to obtain. It could be any intention. And you're not striving, you're not making choices that are pushing you towards that are guiding you towards that are moving you towards that. Guess what? Something will happen that forces you to go in that direction. And you're going to see it as something tragic, something totally adverse, a woe is me moment, or I'll never be the same moment, you know. And then if you look at the fact that look at what's happening, and from a different perspective, you adopt the perception of, this isn't really that bad. Wow, this is interesting. Let me just take a look at this. Right? That wow, we said this a couple of days ago. That was your brilliant statement. Wow, that's interesting. It happens, right? It's just a thing that has occurred in your life. Instead of turning around and judging it as the worst thing, or you'll never recover from this, or you know, this I'm never going to be the same. I'll never be happy again. I'll never find love again. Listen, there is no never. It's just the next page. And you never know where you're going to, what your choices are going to guide you to. And
you're 100% right.
That is so true. And you can look on it and you can say, and all you're doing is holding yourself back when you do that. So the question that he asked involves an element of risk in order to answer, because you have to be able to reach beyond what you think you're capable of, beyond what you think is possible, in order to answer that question in some way based on what you know today, whatever experiential wisdom you've obtained up to this moment in time.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, I started to look through Dorthea Brande's book just briefly, and there was a sentiment in there that really echoed what you were saying, Michael, and it said, she said, with the time and energy we spend in making failure a certainty, we might have certain success.
True. Oh my gosh!
About that.
How profound!
I know. And I thought about that when you said that about this young man. And I'll tell you, I laugh about it, because when I first started driving, this was before Waze and all of these other, you know, Google Maps, all these things that get you where you're going. Well, I live in a city that's built on a triangle. It's not built on a grid. And there's hills. And so you just, you know, there's hills and bridges, and they call it, it's like the city of levels. So when I first started to drive, I sometimes I had no idea where I was going to go. They have these belts like Candyland. They're the green, blue, yellow, red belt, and you follow the belts, and it's a big circle. Eventually, you'll get back to where you started from. And guess what? I had to go somewhere that was on the green belt, and I went the wrong way. And eventually, I went in this really roundabout circle and got back to where I started from. But it's an interesting dynamic because when I drive around the city, I know how to get to all these people. Like, how do you know how to get there? Oh, well, I got lost. How many times did I get lost that I discovered, wow, I didn't know this existed in my city? And I think that's when you embark on something that you are uncertain of. And there is no certainty of success in anything you embark on. But you know what? You discover things along the way. You discover amazing things. Sometimes you discover, like, oh, gosh, I don't know how I got in this neighborhood, but wow, geez, that's really interesting. There's this treasure store here, or there's that, or whatever. And sometimes you'll find the most delightful restaurant that you would never even have heard about had you not tried. And and I thought about that question, too. I thought, really, like, so what are some of the things that I'd like to do if I knew it was impossible to fail? What would I do? I think I would probably try to build a tiny home or, like, can do one of those conversion things. I don't know how to start. I don't have any building skills. But guess what? If I knew it was impossible to fail, absolutely. I don't know. I'd probably have to hire out the electric and the plumbing parts of it. But I think I could probably figure it out. Watch enough videos, get a mentor, right. Have somebody help me that could walk me through it. And whenever you try something for the first time, it's always very daunting and a little scary. But once you've done it once, you're like, hey, guess what? You know what? Yeah, I did that. No big deal. I learned that. I made these mistakes. Oh, don't do it that way. Oh, yeah, you can connect with this guy, and he'll give you the plans. Oh, my gosh, that was it's just the best way to construct it. And I have some friends that did that. They came, I met them in Pittsburgh, and they bought a plot of land in Arizona, and they were looking at ways to build an energy-efficient house. And they ended up building a straw bale house. Mm-hmm. And I... Before that came into my consciousness, I'm like, what do you mean a straw bale house? Isn't that dangerous? And then I saw a video not too long ago, a woman who just decided she was going to build a house in the middle of the woods, and she used trash. And that's what she used to fortify her walls, and then she did mud on top of the trash. And I mean, it's just really, the possibilities are endless when you allow yourself that freedom to explore.
So true.
So, Michael, what would you do that you haven't explored yet if you knew it was impossible to fail?
Wow. It's an interesting question. It's a huge question. I'm thinking about it.
Well, I know there's multiple things. I mean, just one of mine.
It's so interesting when you talk about different things. My interests I am interested in tiny homes. I'm interested in energy efficient homes. I'm interested in how to put a huge dent in the housing crisis for a whole lot less money than is always projected. And I'd likely just move into that direction and find a way. I mean, I'm into the container home design. When I was in college back in the 70s, I took a class that was given by a gentleman who had been all over the world. He lived in the Amazon for a while. I mean, he had a really cool perspective. We had a whole class talking about alternative living and cave living, people who were building homes on sides of mountains, digging into them, and creating energy-efficient homes because once you're in ground, you have stable temperature, regardless of how hot it is outside. Putting earth on top of your home in order to provide the kind of, sort of a living roof kind of thing. The straw bale, of course, we talked about that. We talked about in-ground homes like Cooper Pedy in Australia, where they actually mine opals in Cooper Pedy, Australia, because it's so hot there. It's like always over 100, 110, 120, 130 degrees. It's so hot, you have to live underground.
Wow.
And it's a very cool thing. And let me tell you something. I would visit all of the really cool places, historical places, I'm talking about ancient places in the world, and document them and bring them to people in social media. And kind of tell their story through pictures and dialogue. I'm doing something now, starting a sort of a print and design business. That I'm doing out of sheer faith and creativity and ingenuity and on a shoestring budget, because there's ways to do things that don't involve just buying them, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the thing that goes through my head more than any other is affordable housing. We have a crisis in this world. It's not just in the United States. It's all over the world where large concentrations of money come to really cool, nice places to live, places that have a lot of good energy, and places that good energy attracts tourism. And usually it's on the coast, or it's in the mountains, or it's somewhere where the aesthetic of living is incredibly pleasing. Aesthetics are very pleasing, and it's got a great energy. Your beach here, we've got lots of negative ions, and we've got beautiful beach sand, and we've got, looking on the water, there's nothing like it. The sun sets, the sun rises, you name it. And the problem is that eventually it becomes so popular that the people who grew up there and lived there, who lived there their entire lives, cannot afford to live there anymore. And people who service those people can't afford to live there anymore. This is the problem. This is now a problem in the entire state of Hawaii. Such a beautiful place. Lots of magic in that place. And it's a problem there as well, where you have so much money coming in driving up costs that people who, you have an underlying service industry in every city in the world, an underlying service industry. And what is occurring is that the rates of pay aren't keeping up with the cost of living. And there was a guy, the owner, actually, the CEO, not the owner, but the CEO of Starwood Hotels, a huge hotel group. They were building a fabulous 5-star, 6-star hotel on Kauai. And he kept complaining on the business programs about how he couldn't, not even $30 an hour could get people to help to service the hotel, clean rooms, take care of things, bartend, serve, that, because nobody could afford to live on that island for $30 an hour. And this went on for months, and I'm going, what is this guy going to do? A lot of companies like that have had to invest in on-site housing, or they've had to buy property and build affordable housing for the people servicing the people in their resort. They had to build it. They had to do that in the Bahamas. They had to build. You got a resort out in the middle of nowhere. You need to build housing so people can be there to service your guests. You have to have affordable housing. So they've had to invest in that. And it's happening where I live as well. So not to belabor the point, but it's a super interest of mine. If I could just drop everything and just work on that and figure a way to solve that issue and be able to have not only affordable homes, but homes that people would be proud to live in, as singles or couples or family or whatever. And they've had to do container homes in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, they've adopted container homes because they're one of the few things, the other building processes aren't surviving these hurricanes that they keep getting. So a young woman, young Puerto Rican woman, actually started, she said, we got tons of containers at the port. Let's use those for homes. And she started doing that. Now they're basic, okay? They're nothing fancy. They're not little container mansions. However, I have seen some things that will blow your mind. And so it's kind of interesting. We all have our little things that we think about. If we weren't doing anything else, if we didn't have to earn a living doing something, if we could just go off and do it, what would we do? What hole would we fill? What need would we satisfy in this world? How would we be of service to others in our community and others around the world? And there's some really cool stuff happening. And I can't talk at all. But
I don't know if you've seen the project that Elon Musk undertook in regards to the container homes. I think he calls it the boxable casita, I believe it is, and they're around $50,000, and they're just. I think.
I didn't know that was a project.
Yeah, it is. It was.
Yeah.
It was. It's something.
Is this the one that unfolds into a home?
Yep.
Yeah,
into a home. It has everything already there.
Like 450 square feet.
Yeah. But when you look at them, they're so. It's so amazing, like how they have them set up. You have your living area, you have your bed. I mean, you could rearrange and do things, and I think at one time, and I know I grew up in an area where these people have these beautiful, big, fabulous homes. But as I've gotten further on my journey, I like the smaller. It's just I don't need as much stuff. I don't like what's the point of having all these rooms just to decorate, to bring people over to show you that I've got all this stuff.
And fill with stuff, crazy. You're filling
all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, my books I'm a little hard pressed to get rid of because I love my books, but that's going to be, yeah. For me anyway.
Books are essential. However, the cool thing. I mean, there's books that we don't want to let go of because those books represent enlightenment that we can go tap into again at some particular point in the future.
Sure.
Sometimes books. I know you like audio. I like audio too, and I'm going back now and listening to other audiobooks that I've enjoyed that I've listened to 2 years ago. I'm going back and listening to them again in my library.
Me too. Isn't that so interesting? You and I are on the same wavelength because there's things I think probably that you and I need to hear again. And I think that it doesn't matter if there's some books that I listen to once a year because I pull it out. I mean, The Little Prince is one of those books for me. And there's a lot of them like that. I will never, even though I've given away so many copies of the Four Agreements, I continue to buy one when I see them. I'm like, oh, okay, here, I'll pick this up. You never know when I can hand it to somebody and say, this book was really profound in changing my life and impacting me, and I can align myself with those agreements in one of.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, so much so. It's interesting. We come across people who, for one reason or another, are in the throes of seeking enlightenment that can help them. They've come to this realization that they are the ones responsible for dictating the path of their life and how they feel, and are understanding their role of responsibility in their own life. And that you can't always just blame it on something outside of you, right? Because living in that world is an endless pit of despair, because you feel powerless to change circumstances or to change how you feel, and that's the one thing that I embrace more than anything else, and that I attempt to share in a variety of different ways. Is that hey, this is your life. You have. Everything has a consequence. Every choice, every decision has a consequence, of course. But the number one thing you have to do is take responsibility. If you're going to take risks, if you're going to go out and seek to answer that question, what would you do if you knew it were impossible to fail? Which I would encourage every listener to on PRNFN and on our podcast to sit down for a moment and just really think about that question and how a little move that they could make might move them in a direction that is so much better for them. And that's really all it is. It's just a little baby step. It's just turn your life to the right 1 degree, and move on that new course and see where you end up. And I love, by the way, when you said earlier about getting lost in Pittsburgh. I have found traveling the world some of the most amazing places by simply just walking and getting lost. Of course, I do one thing. If I'm in a foreign country I've never been in before, it could be a third world country or whatever, I ask somebody at the hotel, what areas do I want to totally avoid? And is it okay for me to kind of go out here? You know, it's good to be safe, and to as somebody traveling, you always want to do that. However, you can, you know, we went into the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, which is a huge bazaar. It's been around for, you know, a couple thousand years. And you walk in the entrance, and that's all you're doing is getting lost in that place because it's huge, right? You never know what you're going to come across. You have an idea about maybe what you think you want, or maybe you don't want anything. You just want to look, and you want to just see people, and you want to say hello to a few shop owners, or you find a little place to get a bite to eat that you never would have found otherwise. And we did that. Sit down and have some tea and have a chat with somebody else who's perhaps from the Western world, and you know, how are you? Why are you here? What are you doing? Where'd you come from? You know, and you know, what did you buy here? I found a great belt. I found a couple of other things. Never would have known it was there, right?
That's awesome.
Fun. It's fun to do that, right? I also bought some cool teas, right, that I brought back with me, and just like flower, just these package of flower buds, different colorfuls of very fragrant things that I can make a tea out of. And I have those, and I treat them like gold, you know, like platinum, like diamonds. I don't do it every day. Like once a month, I'll pull out, you know, a little half a handful and stick it in and steep it for like, you know, 30 minutes, and you get this beautiful, rich red, fragrant tea, and it's so much fun. But those totally. you discover things you never know.
Absolutely, and it can be very intimidating when you go to a foreign country to go into a market like that. And there's some people, I would never do that. But it's a shame that they would never do that, because there are so many magical things that they could run into that they would never even know. When I went to Africa and then went to Zanzibar, we went on a spice tour. And, you know, and people think, why would you want to go on something like that? Oh my gosh, it was so amazing to see where all of these spices came from. And the one young man, he climbed a tree to get us fresh coconuts. Like, I've never seen anybody climb a tree so fast in my entire life with nothing to grab onto. And it was so incredible. And there was just one amazing taste and smell and scent after another. And you think, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Are you sure you really want to go out there? I don't know about that. And there were some people in my group who missed out on it. I was so grateful that I didn't, because it was just like you. I brought home cardamom from the spice. Oh my gosh, the spice farm. And it's like, every time I open up a pot, I'm right back there again.
Exactly.
But it's interesting. And, you know, when you talk about how do you act, you know, really acting as if it's impossible to fail. And I think about anybody that's ever gotten up on the America's Got Talent stage. And the other night I didn't see it when it was live, but there was a gentleman, he was a British guy, Piff the Magic Dragon. And he walked out onto the stage. I just caught a little clip of it. He had walked out onto the stage in this dragon costume, and Howard Stern and all the other judges looked at him like, who is this weirdo? Just came out on stage. But he was funny. He was a good magician. He ended up, you know, really at the time, should I keep pursuing this? And he went on to go very far in the show and ended up almost giving up because he didn't win at the end of the season, and kind of had a little bit of difficulty. And then one of the casinos in Vegas said, "Hey, we'd love to have you here," and they gave him his own theater. And so you just never know. I mean, when he walked out in that dragon suit. Like, and I'm sure a lot of people said to him, that's really dumb. Like, are you kidding me? You're going to go on national TV.
You're going to get the doubters. You're going to get the haters. You're going to get my new term is doomers, right? You're going to get the doomers, and people who based on their own failures now look at life. They see their life through the prism of failure, and they want other people to embrace that prism of failure that they see, right? So everybody who's ever done anything in the entertainment business, who's had any success, any amount of success, has had to do this. They've had to have this. And let's just look at this as a mindset, as a state of being. It's a mindset, okay? So you adopt the mindset of you're going to you approach everything in life as if you could not fail, right? That's the mindset that you have to have. So as an entertainer, as a singer, as a songwriter, as a player, whatever, you have to have that mindset. You have to go there. Otherwise, what's the point? You're never going to put 110% of your effort into whatever it is if you don't adopt this mindset. So it's like a catch-22. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have the success without actually committing to stepping off the cliff and knowing you can fly. Right? You have to have that. You have to know that. You have to stand at the precipice and say, okay, I'm going to take this leap. And I know that a parachute's going to come out at some particular point in time. I'm not going to hit the ground, I'm not going to, crash and burn. You may stub your toe. You may twist an ankle. You may, I can think of a zillion physical analogies.
Sure.
You may do that because you may make a mistake that takes you down a different road, and then you have to look at that in a positive way as well, because maybe it was just telling you that you didn't need to be there, you needed to be somewhere different. You have to adopt a positive perception of whatever it is from a learning perspective so that you can get back on track and attempt to do something else. Attempt to do something else that and you can't fail. My brother had to do this. Anybody who's ever, you listen to any biography of any superstar, mega A-lister, or even the D-listers, people who are character actors who disappear into the background, but they make a living doing what they love. They had to go through something. They had to take some sort of risk. They had to adopt the mindset of, I can do this. I can do this. I am doing this. I have this. And that's where they have to be. It's about what we keep telling ourselves. The story we keep telling ourselves is what's going to keep unfolding and playing out in our life. If our story is one of we're going to fail, then that is the story that is going to play out. That's the reality you're going to experience, and you will attract to you everything that has to do with failure, including everyone who's ever failed. And they will give you the reason why you won't be successful. They will ad nauseum tell you why you won't be successful. And the people who, this is the one thing that I keep telling my friend, sometimes the people you care about most, that you love most in your life, will be the doomer who will attempt to take you down, to take your dream and trash it. Which is why the most brilliant thing I ever heard from Dr. Joseph Murphy from the 1920s or 30s, Dr. Joseph Murphy, he said, do not share your dream. It is your dream. The human mind is subject to being derailed. Okay, you have that ability. Everybody, thought viruses are easy to contract from people that you love and care about. So if your mother or your father tells you can't do anything, it's not because you can't do it. It's because they didn't succeed doing something similar, and they don't want you to feel what they felt, how they felt. When you, adopting a different mindset, will have a completely different experience. However, we have to get, and even your girlfriend, boyfriend, your husband, your wife, your best friend in the world that you've known for 50 years could possibly turn out to be a doomer when you come up with a really cool thing you want to do, when you want to take a risk, you want to move in that direction. And you've got to ask yourself, am I going to listen to them or am I going to listen to me and my heart? And am I going to move forward with a mindset of, I know I'm going to succeed. It's going to be impossible for me to fail. No failure because you learn something at the very least, right? You learn something. Mm-hmm. And that's never, you can't take that for granted. You're going to learn something. You're not going to learn anything if you stay where you are. Never. Just not
100%.
possible. Yeah.
I look at, I remember early on in my journey I went to a friends of mine, they were artists and musicians, and they dressed in drag and did all kinds of crazy things on stage. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they're just so much bohemians, they were hipsters.
Right.
And I was the square, right, when I went over there. But I remember one night they invited me over, and Gary was making absinthe, and they just were such interesting friends, and they were like, come over and watch this documentary on Buckminster Fuller.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, who's Buckminster Fuller?
Oh,
this is somebody, and I thought to myself, I have no idea who this is. And then and I'm watching it. And it's like, one of the things he said is nothing in a caterpillar tells you you're going to be a butterfly. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That was just, father of the geodesic dome, so many different things, but somebody who was, I think, probably ridiculed, belittled, not allowed, you think somebody who had 28 patents and nobody talked about him. I didn't know who he was. Who's Buckminster Fuller, right?
Yeah. Listen, I learned about him in college. What a brilliant guy. The geodesic dome, I've seen them, I've been in them. They're the most amazing invention from a perspective of shelter. And they're not incredibly expensive, and they are also, by the way, resistant to 200-plus mile winds, which makes them ideal for living in an area where hurricanes and high winds are prevalent. However, we live in a world where people judge, and I still today, to this moment, have not met anyone who saw who I gave a picture of the dome to, who didn't say, "Ugh, you want to live in that? That's ugly." Because we all have this idea of what pretty is to us, and
right.
It's nobody's thinking about functionality, energy efficiency. They're thinking about beauty. Would I want to be seen living in that? And there's a lot of them down on the Capitola Coast in Santa Cruz, California.
They put one at Epcot Center. I remember,
And they've got a ride in one, right? So I don't know if anybody's actually gone through the design process to make them more palatable. You can make them any color you want. It'd be kind of cool to make one in a very cool purple color, or even hot pink, earthy pink, or orange, or something. Even make different color tiles. The geodesic tiles that they put together, the triangles. You walk inside of them and you're like, oh my gosh, I can do anything I want with this thing. Anything. I can create one story. I can make it one story. I can make it a story and a half. I can put a loft. I can make 2 stories. I can do whatever I want, right? But I know I'm not going to get blown away. But the architecture that is taught in school and in college, architects generally, the majority of them, those that I know, aren't thinking outside the box. They're just designing homes that people think they want. They want to make a living, obviously. So it's not about coming up with a design that they have to sell to someone. They take the easy route. Say, yeah, what do you want? Oh, yeah, you want a house that looks like that? Okay, I'll design something similar to that. Tell me how you want it laid out, right? Instead of reaching. That's why I like, there's a couple of really cool architects. One's up in New York, and there's, I think there's one in Italy. They're all over the place, literally, that are making shopping centers out of containers. They're making...
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, shopping centers. They're making apartments
out
of containers.
That's amazing.
Really cool. They look great. They've got great coloring. You walk into them, they've got great design features, quite highly livable, and inexpensive to create. And, what we have to do is have an acceptance. We have to have a level of acceptance for those things that don't, those square pegs that we keep trying to put in round holes. Maybe they need a square orifice to go into, right? They don't need, we're not trying to make a bunch of round pegs. And this is what happens. One of my pet peeves about, going to in early childhood education and on, the child that's dancing at home isn't allowed to dance at school. What's up with that?
Right.
Where's the opportunity to spread your creative wings and your spontaneity? These are things that are invaluable to us later in life, but they get drummed out of us.
Yep.
Get drummed out of us.
Oh, absolutely.
This question gets drummed out of us.
It does.
It gets drummed out of us. That's why Brooks was so adamant about asking this question. He kept asking over and over again. He talked to people, and let's have a conversation about what, not necessarily what is possible, but what thought process is holding you back, preventing you from being the you that you can be, regardless of what it is. The person who you really seek and have wanted to be your whole life, what is preventing you from being that person, stepping into that reality?
That's a powerful statement, Michael. And I think if people ask themselves that question, a lot of times they look to somebody else for the answer.
Yeah.
Somebody will pose the question. They'll say, well, what do you think? What do you think this is about me, or what? What are your thoughts? And they pass the buck onto somebody else.
Well, that question is the one we want to. Let's just say this. It becomes exponentially more challenging to answer the question in front of people. And to me, this is a personal thing.
Right.
It's like you ask yourself that question. Let's just challenge our listeners to embrace this question and not tell anybody that they're embracing the question. It's not something that you share with anyone. It's your question, and it's your answer, specific to you. And see how that makes you feel when you embrace the question and start looking for answers. You start intuiting answers to it. Because it's interesting, the question alone is a shift. Just asking yourself the question, just asking it, just addressing it on the surface it opens a door. And that's what we want to do in life, is we want to keep opening doors. We want to keep opening doors and walking through them. And so the minute that you embrace the question as something that you should be asking yourself, that move alone is enough to create a little rift, right? A little rift.
Yep.
In how comfortable you are, because now you're thinking in a different way. And that's really where it starts. You want to create that small rift.
It's so true. I mean, we truly only have this one life. Marcus Aurelius said, you're not going to live 2,000 years. More I delve into his life and his teachings and the writings, I'm just like, wait a minute. And the same thing, I didn't grow up studying the writings of Marcus Aurelius. There's a lot of individuals, and that's what I really love about the internet and the technology, that I can look up a book and I can start to listen, because I don't have enough hours in my day to read everything, but I can, when I jump in the car, put a book on and listen. And I last year was like 394 books that I went through. Awesome. And some of them I listen to again, and we'll probably listen to them again and again and again.
I think it's awesome.
Because in the cracks of my day, when I'm cleaning or I'm taking care of dogs or whatever, I just pop one on. And I could listen to music, and I love listening to music, but I really Even the books and the things that I'm learning, it's just amazing. And I wouldn't have the time to read that many books in a year. But it's for my own personal. I mean, some of them, and the classes and the other things that I do to nurture myself. And all of those, I think, help me grow and help my imagination lead me to questions like this and to wonder and to sort of say what is possible, what are the next steps, what do I want to create. And whether I take it into meditation or I speak with you because you are like my muse and we share a lot of the same passions, it's very, very helpful. So I would encourage our listeners too to find somebody that you can share your vision with. Once you've taken it in.
Let's take it one step further and simply say that, piggybacking on what I just said and what you said, to find somebody, it's a function of the frequency you're resonating. This question has a frequency. This question has a frequency, and when you create a rift, you are moving into that frequency. You want to move into it further by examining it, and by asking yourself this question. I wouldn't put it past the universe, and as frequencies work, that you would encounter someone in short order who also was asking themselves the same question.
So true.
We're not the only ones. And that's the beauty of shifting your frequency, which is what you really want to do. We'll do a whole show. There's some new stuff about frequency, and so hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can discuss that. However, this is one of the ways that you can shift your frequency. Kind of like when you start, you're looking for love, and what most people do when they're looking for love is they come up with all the ways and reasons why they're not lovable, instead of coming up with all the ways that they are lovable. And instead of beating themselves up, building themselves up and staying positive about themselves. And because if you're getting down on yourself and beating yourself up is why I'm not lovable, why can't I keep a relationship for longer than 10 seconds? Why can't I do this? Why does this keep happening to me? If that's your mindset, that's going to perpetuate. And you're going to get people who will continue to validate that thinking and that frequency that you're on, that negative frequency. Let's elevate it and talk about think about all the ways, and talk about all the ways that you're fantastic, you're wonderful, you're exceptional as a person, as a human being, as a soul, as a spirit. You're amazing. All the cool things that you do, that you love, that you're good at. Let's talk about that, and let other people then, because you're resonating that frequency, you will attract other people who will validate that in you. And it's a beautiful thing. It's not a catch-22. It's not a conundrum. It's literally that you have to take a step in that direction. This question is one of those steps, one of those pivots that can help you just create whatever it is you want. What would you, let's apply this to relationships, right? What would you say to someone if you knew that you would never be turned down?
Right.
Would you ask a person that you've really cared about for some period of time out for a cup of coffee if you knew they wouldn't say no? They might say no. However, you can ask. You never ask, you don't get. That's just the way it goes. You have to take that risk in some way. Believe in yourself. Believe in what's possible instead of what's impossible. What did somebody say the other day? Impossible is I am possible. I think I read that somewhere.
Absolutely.
The other day.
That's truly.
Impossible is I am possible. Everything is possible.
And it truly is. And I want to say, Michael, I think that it's not a closed-ended question. What would you do if it was impossible to fail? It doesn't end. It's an open-ended question.
Oh, yeah.
And there are so many possibilities, the infinite possibilities that exist from that. And I think that that's really how you live through that. And because you ask an open-ended question, you may find, Michael, that you'll be in a coffee shop and that person who builds those tiny homes just happens to be sitting next to you. Because I know that that's how your life works.
Here's the interesting thing. Listen to this. I'm on the cruise a year ago in December, and we opt for this opportunity on this ship to be seated with someone. And so, we'd ask the question. He asked us the question with the maitre d', says, "You want to sit by yourselves, or you want us to seat somebody with you?" I looked at my girlfriend and I said, "Come on, let's we're here to meet people. We don't be sitting around. We can hang out in our room if we want to just be by ourselves." So I said, "Yeah, we'll sit us with somebody." And the couple that ended up sitting down next to us was from Gainesville, which is about 4.5 hours away from us. Okay, he's a university professor, and she is a child psychologist. And we talked till 12:30 at night. We went from there to the upstairs, rooftop bar. We sat down. We talked about, and it turns out that, believe it or not, he has asked himself the same question.
Oh my!
Affordable housing. How can we conquer? I've thought about tiny homes. He said. I've thought about container homes. I'm looking at this guy dumbfounded, going, I have found someone, or attracted someone to me that actually is asking the same questions I'm asking. It has the same train of thought, and it was really rather cool. And we still text and communicate today, which is really
fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah, so he may actually stop by here on his way to California in the next couple of months, which is really wonderful. And you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to attract in your life. And I can guarantee you're not going to attract somebody who's if you're attracting doomers into your life. People who walk all over your dreams, it is likely because, I'm not going to say this is the only reason, because you have many, many, many doubts yourself about what it is, about success. You have a fear of moving forward. And you're getting people into your life who are validating that fear, validating that the doubts you have, that you're sending out like radar signals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we you hear about everybody who's ever had any success, and you can read books about people who talk about their early beginnings, and you see how many walls they had to climb over. How many walls they had to break down, climb over, move around, walk around, implode, put some dynamite in, just blow them up and just walk through, right? It's like these people had to do a lot to get to the point, and it was belief in themselves and belief in their dream, belief in their intention. That's what got them there, and it's fascinating to see and to see stories of these people and read about them. I'm always fascinated. I'll sit down and listen to someone talk about how they, what they, their commitment to what it is that they knew they could do. And there was a woman, I think it was a woman who, I think this is my last story, the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade this year in New York City, one of the co-hosts was a woman who back in 2010 or 2012 or something like that, she said, I thought I was supposed to go to Broadway and be on Broadway, and she got turned down 30 times for parts and roles. And she went and she took a different tack, and she went into broadcasting, right? And then here, all these many years later, she I think a couple of years ago, she did this sort of live audition for me and said, I really want to be this. This is what I'd like to be doing. Call me, And she'd been turned down by him 2 or 3 times already. And she ended up this year getting the role that she wanted to get in some sort of holiday event that she had. It was a one-time event in a theater in New York City. The role she really, really wanted, and the number of people who have been turned down, who've been told that they weren't right for the part, that they would never be successful. Why are you bothered? Go get a vocation that will actually pay your rent. I mean, there's all these things. You're going to find thousands of people, millions of people who don't believe in what it is that you are committed to. Yet, the question is not how many people are urging you to give up. It's how many times you say it's possible. Mm-hmm. That's the key. It's what you think. And I love those stories, right? So what would you do if you knew you were impossible to fail? Come on now. Write it on our respond. I know you're going to put an Instagram post out about this, and I'd love to hear people's comments.
I know. I'm going to challenge our listeners, and I'd love to hear from everybody. I'm just so grateful for all of you who tune into us here on Connect to Love on PRN FM, and thank you, Michael. I just really applaud you because you really do always act as if it's impossible to fail, and I would encourage each of our listeners to do the same. Thank you.
We are muses to each other, and I love that. And yes, you encouraged people earlier to go out and to do that. They will come to you. You will find someone, that one person. They will come to you. You'll attract them to you when you start thinking this way. That thinks like you, and that you'll be able to expose your dreams and your goals, and they'll go, yeah, go for it. I'm your biggest supporter. It is possible. I know it's happened to me with you. So, hey.
Truly. Well, until next time, be well and truly live as if it's impossible to fail.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.